You know the drill, Tanner here, and I'm back with another commentary vlog. I'm working on a ton of projects right now, some of which I'll show you near the end of the video, but I've also been fine-tuning a lot of my aquariums. As such, this one will focus mostly on said aquariums, including the Blue Dream Shrimp Aquarium, the former Terrarium in an Aquarium, and my Betta Casper's Aquarium. Let's start out with the Terrarium in an Aquarium, or I should say what was formerly the Terrarium in an Aquarium. I'm really tired of saying that though, so from now on we'll call it the Danos Escape unless you have a better suggestion. That's because this tank is inhabited by a school of Danio tinwini, commonly known as gold ring Danios. We'll talk more about them later on, but in the meantime, let's spruce up this tank. If you recall, I originally set this up about a year ago and scaped it with the Terrarium. Long story short, it lasted for a decent while, but eventually failed due to lack of maintenance. Just recently though, I removed the Terrarium and it sat for about a month since. Even before that time, I haven't done much maintenance other than water changes because I knew I was going to alter the setup. As a result, the plants got kind of leggy and overall the aesthetic just became less than ideal. There were also some slight algae issues at the time I removed the Terrarium. However, removing the Terrarium added an additional gallon of water to the tank, which allowed for better dilution and the tank balanced itself out. So at this point, no algae needs addressed, but the tank does need a facelift. To start, I removed any dead plants, trimmed ones that I wanted to keep, and removed some to replant later on. With the plants taken care of, I can now adjust the hardscape, which currently consists of Sierra stone. For the most part I like where they sit, but they were originally arranged for the Terrarium, so they don't look proper anymore. This time around I wanted to make more room in the foreground, and arrange the stones in a way that they would complement some nice driftwood. After that I used a net to capture some of the debris that was floating around in the water column. Now we can finally add the driftwood. For this one I'll be using some Mupani wood, which I think goes well with Sierra stone. My goal with this tank scape wise is to allow for a lot of cover in the background and a lot of open swimming space in the foreground. I'm doing this because I know what the fish want. I've observed them for quite a bit and it seems like they really enjoy being in a forest of plants. It doesn't seem like it's for coverage reasons, but more so that they interact with one another amongst the plants. I say this because they're not skittish fish whatsoever, and they only hang out in the forest when they don't know that I'm around. Otherwise they're front and center, zooming all over the place, interacting with me and begging for food. So I want to give them the best of both worlds. Anyways, you know how I do. I stood here and hardscaped the thing for a good half hour or so, until I got it just right. You should know by now that I'm not shy about adjusting tanks over time, but I prefer to get the hardscape as good as possible the first time around. In my opinion, plants are much easier to adjust over time than the hardscape, so I usually spend a lot more time on the hardscape than I do planting. After getting it just right, I went and drained about 80% of the tank, doing a slight gravel vac in the process. Then I filled it back up with some fresh, dechlorinated tap water. From there I went and planted the remainder of the setup. Don't worry, I'll put the names of all the plants down in the video description. Here I'm using predominantly stem plants, but I also have some crypts and a few rhizome plants. As you would expect, I meticulously put everything in locations that I felt looked good and would create nice variation in texture. Here we are a few days later. Naturally, everything needs to fill in, but I think it looks a million times better than before. What do you think? I say give this tank a good 3 to 6 months and it's really gonna look pristine. What about stocking though? Will I continue with just gold ring Danios, various snails, and a mono shrimp? Most likely, but I definitely want to get a larger school of Danios, maybe around 20 or so. Of course, I could always change my mind and add other fish or inverts, but for now I think that's the best plan. Now onto the Blue Dream Shrimp Aquarium. I set this up a few months back and it's doing fairly well, but it does need some maintenance. The first thing I want to address is the moss on the driftwood. It's growing well, but not nearly as dense and compact as I would like. To address this, I took the wood out of the tank and wrapped the moss up with some brown sewing thread. In theory, this should help promote the more compact and dense growth that I'm looking for without doing anything drastic. After that, I put the wood back into the tank and proceeded to care for the plants. The ones that are in the tank now need trimmed and replanted to create denser growth, so that's what I did first. Then I added a few new plants. Like before, I'll put all of the names down in the video description. Once I was completed with my maintenance, I went and did about a 30% water change. Here we are a few days later, the current look at the Blue Dream Shrimp Aquarium. I like how it's turning out, but it's still very much a work in progress. The current plant stuff to grow into the space more, and I want to add some additional small accent plants, especially up front. I'll probably add mostly rhizome plants like Anubias and Bucephalandra, but we'll save that for another time. What about the shrimp though? The shrimp are doing well and have grown significantly since I put them in here. They were really small initially, so to my knowledge they haven't bred yet, but I swear that I saw one the other day that was buried. To conclude, this one's not perfect, but it's getting there little by little. Now we'll take a brief look at Casper's aquarium. The first thing worth mentioning is that I added a few segments of Bolbitis heudelotii from the Blue Dream Shrimp tank into this one. I'm really glad that I had extra because they look excellent in this setup and really added some nice texture. I also got some Salvinia to accent the water's surface. Aside from these additions, the tank really is maturing and filling in nicely. There's not much else to say about it other than I really enjoy it. It seems like Casper and his Amano shrimp buddies do as well. While we're on the Salvinia, I also added some to the Nano Riparium, which is still doing great, along with the fire-bellied toad paludarium and MJ's paludarium. I'm not sure if it will work long term in all of these setups, but I think it will look really cool if it does. The paludariums are also doing well, but we'll go into further detail on those in a later video. Since we're talking about paludariums, the last thing that I want to show you is that I've been working on Samson's paludarium. In case you forgot, Samson is my African bullfrog. I know it looks like I have a ton of work ahead of me, and I do, but since I have it all planned out, it really shouldn't take too much longer. I believe I should have that video out in early April, so stay tuned if that's something you want to see. And that's going to conclude it for this one. Be sure to subscribe and join the Serpa squad if you're not already a part of it, so that you can see the continued progression of these setups and all of the future projects that I have planned. Also, you know how it goes. If you wouldn't mind giving this video a thumbs up and maybe even leaving a comment, I'd really appreciate it because both go a long way in supporting this channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one, Serpa Squad. Peace.